10 years, and as a teacher, one of my passions has been that I really want to get my students excited about science. And one of the ways that I've been able to do that is by connecting them to scientists, engaging them with data, and then showing them that even their teacher can be a scientist. And some of the programs that I've been involved with include the Polar Track program, where I went with a team to Antarctica and studied microorganisms living in glaciers. I worked with the NOAA Teacher at Sea program and got to go to the Bering Sea and study pollock with a group of fisheries biologists. And then for the past 2 years, I've been an Einstein Fellow at the NOAA Office of Education, where I help them to connect teachers and students to NOAA scientists and their data. And so what I'd like to do is kind of show you today where I've been successful and kind of how I've been able to do that. So the first thing is really what are the advantages to scientist and teacher partnerships? That the first thing as a scientist, I really have seen a lot of my scientists that I've worked with really grow through our partnerships, and that they've been able to learn how to communicate to a completely different audience that is kind of beyond their traditional circles that they've worked with before. That could include anyone from a 5-year-old to a 15-year-old to even a 70-year-old. And how are you going to take your research and communicate to them? And teachers really can help you to do that. Another one is with data collection, that teachers and students can be collecting data that relates to your research and really help you to expand your area. And then it also helps you to establish your required outreach. And for a teacher, some of the things that I have really been able to gain from this is really my confidence in my subject matter, that science is constantly changing. And as a teacher, I want to stay up on the latest and greatest things. And by working with scientists, I really can do that, and it gives me that confidence in my classroom. And it's also helping me to bring that real world data to my kids that we can use in the class and bring relevance, because kids want to know. That I'm constantly asked, what is this going to do for me? Or why are we even learning this? They want to know that, and this has really been helpful for me. It's also very rejuvenating, that it gets me excited to create new lessons and bring new things into my classrooms. And I've also been able to bring in new supplies and equipment by working with scientists that, school budgets are pretty slim, and so I can't really afford to buy one piece of equipment just for one lab that I do once a year. But if I can work with a scientist, then they can bring that into my classroom, and it really helps me. And really, as a teacher, what's going to make me the happiest is if my students are engaged, because then that's less for work with classroom management and all those. That if my kids are happy, I'm happy as a teacher. And so one of the reasons of why we really should be doing these teacher and scientist partnerships is for the kids. And so that's the most important thing, is that we should be working together not to benefit ourselves as a scientist or the teacher, but we really want to benefit the students, that we want to inspire the next generation of scientists. And to do that, they really need role models. That a lot of my kids, they think that scientists are these imaginary people that are on the Discovery Channel, and they have no idea how they get from being in my classroom to being on that job or having that job that they see on the Discovery Channel. And really, with working with scientists and bringing the scientists into my classroom, they're able to see science as a career pathway now. And so it's really bringing that pathway plus the relevance of what they're learning is actually something that can apply to a career and just apply to everyday life. And really what's super important to me as a teacher is that my kids are doing science. And part of GLOBE and the motto for GLOBE is to do science instead of just reading about it. That I believe that science isn't history, that science is happening right now. And for kids to learn science, they need to be doing science. And that may sound all great and it's going to benefit all these different people and our kids and us, but realistically, there are challenges. And so to talk a little bit about the challenges out there is that there's definitely the challenge in making that initial connection. that how are you going to find a teacher, first of all? And once you do find a teacher, how are you going to make sure that it's that right teacher that you want to establish a partnership? Definitely personalities. You want to have somebody that you can imagine yourself working with. And then there comes the schedules that teachers and scientists tend to have very different schedules. That I start teaching at 7:15 in the morning and I'm done at 2:15. That's very different from a college schedule. And then aligning to the curriculum. That as a teacher, I have very, very limited time to teach different subjects, and it's pretty much laid out for the entire year that I have this time to teach this subject, this time to teach that subject, and being able to align the research that you're doing into what I'm doing at my classroom at the right time, it kind of happens, sometimes it doesn't. And then we come into budgets and having limited supplies. And one thing to think about is I've taught in several different schools, and all schools are not the same. That some schools are going to have a variety of supplies, and then you may walk into another school and they might not even have paper. So really trying to figure out and knowing the school before you establish that partnership. And then we really want to engage students. And so one of the challenges is when you walk into a classroom of 30 kids, there's going to be different personalities, different learning styles, different interests, different achievement levels. And what are you going to do to ensure that you're engaging all of those kids? Can be very, very intimidating at times. But don't worry, I'm not going to leave you with just challenges. I strongly believe that the benefit of teacher-scientist partnerships far outweighs the challenges. And today what I want to do is give you 5 tips that are going to help you establish a successful teacher and scientist partnership. So the first tip is that choose your partnership wisely. When you're selecting a teacher that you want to establish a partnership with, definitely think about personalities. Is this someone that you want to work with and that you want to work with on a long-term basis? Think about the subject matter that the teacher teaches. Where does your research fit into what that teacher is teaching in their classroom? And it could be even the time of year or if the teacher even teaches that subject. Think about the age of student that you want to work with. Is it elementary? Is it middle school? Are they older children in a high school? Or is it in a community program where they might have a variety of different ages? And then think about schedules. That schools are very set in when curriculum is taught at different times of year. So thinking about where does your research fit into that curriculum schedule, and then also thinking about school calendars. If you're going to try to show up and do a lesson with a school in June, well, one, the school might not even be open, or you might have just chaos because it's the end of the school year and you might not want to do that either. So you really need to think about schedules and where that might fit in. The second tip that I have is definitely realize that working with a teacher and working with a scientist is a two-way street. That this is a collaboration is what this partnership should be. That both sides have a lot to give and a lot to gain, and it shouldn't be about checking a box. For a scientist, it shouldn't be about saying, okay, I did my broader impacts and I'm good. And for a teacher, it shouldn't be about, hey, okay, now I'm going to get a better evaluation because I involved the outside community. That it shouldn't be about you, it should be about the kids, and it should also be about realizing that both sides have a lot to give and a lot to gain. The third tip is definitely communications. As in any relationship, communication is incredibly important. And so the first thing is establishing the best means of communication. And realize that even though email is very convenient, it might not be that. That with teachers, that I'd say if it's a busy day in the classroom for me, I may check my email maybe 2-3 times. Maybe more, maybe less, but if a scientist emails me an urgent email and needs to get back to me right away, I may not, because I've got 30 kids that all want my attention all at the same time too. And then a key thing is to set expectations for the partnership. One of the things that when I was working with Polar Trek, the very first time I met my team, we sat down and we established what our expectations that we wanted. That my scientists really wanted me to create lab activities for kids that replicated the science that they were doing in the field. And they really wanted me to blog while they're in the field and tell the story of what they're doing. And for me, I really wanted to do science, and I wanted to show my kids that I could be a scientist. And then I wanted to bring actual data back into my classroom and my experiences and be able to relate it, what I was doing, to what I do in the classroom. So we set those expectations out in the beginning, and then it really established a good partnership from that point on, because we could always come back and look at, are we fulfilling those expectations? And then I would definitely say that if you're going to visit a classroom, if you're going to do a project with kids, if you are going to do a lesson, that plan it together, plan it with the teacher. That I've had this happen before where someone has come in to talk to my students and they say, oh, I'm going to come in and talk about this subject, and they don't really plan it with me at all. And I don't know, I want to make sure that my kids know some stuff before the scientist gets there. Well, then all they did was repeat exactly what I said. Or I've had people come into my classroom and talk so far over my kids' heads that my kids are just blankly staring at them. So you definitely want, if you're going to a classroom, plan that together with the teacher. And then practice first, always. So I've had several bad experiences where we didn't practice Skype ahead of time and my kids are staring at a blank screen, just waiting. Or coming in and doing activities and we didn't test them ahead of time and so they didn't work. Or technology. Technology, it's fantastic, but it'll get you if you don't practice beforehand. One definitely to think about in visiting a school is that we have a lot of filters on our web. And so you may come in and be like, all right, I got the best link. I'm going to show this internet site. I'm going to show this YouTube video. Yep, well, a lot of those things are probably blocked at a school. And so what you just prepared is not going to work in the school. So there's definitely, the more you communicate and the more you plan with the teacher before then, it's the more successful it's going to be for the kids. My fourth tip is engage the students, that they are so excited to see you and have somebody different in front of their classroom. Do not just walk in and do a PowerPoint presentation, because those kids are going to be crushed. And if you think about it, some of the research says that if you got about a minute for every year of age the kid is. So if you have a bunch of 10-year-olds, you got about 10 minutes of one thing before you have to switch it up and do something different. That you need to keep on the ball and keep them engaged. And don't be afraid to get kids out of their seat. It doesn't have to be that chaos of my kids running around in the picture, but definitely don't be afraid to move kids around. And if you plan with the teacher beforehand, the teacher will realize that they're in charge of classroom management and making sure those kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing if you're leading the activity. And definitely engage them with demonstrations, with cool photos, videos of you in the field, fun activities, bring in cool lab equipment that they've never seen before. Those are the things that really, really get kids excited. And I realize that many scientists have not been trained in how to make a lesson or go into a classroom and kind of plan for this. So I like to use the 5 E's when I'm doing planning, and it's engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. And on this slide, this is an example of how I use that model when, before I went to Antarctica, I visited lots of classrooms. I went to second grade classrooms all the way up to high school classrooms to really get them excited about my expedition so that they would follow it. And so what I did is that my first thing you want to do is you really want to get the kids excited straight from the start. And so I would either have one of the kids or bring my high school students with me if I was going to a younger classroom, and I would dress them up in the huge ECW gear, and they would walk in a classroom, and the kids would be super excited and super pumped about my visits right from the very beginning. And then from there we would explore. So really like seeing what the kids already know. So I brought in some crushed ice, and I gave some to the kids, and they squeezed it in their hands, and they saw that it formed in ice cubes. And then we talked about how ice sheets form. And then I got to explain it. So this is where you can do PowerPoint, and you can do probably just a short 10 or 15-minute talk and talk about what they just saw and explain why they just saw what they saw. And then you can elaborate. And usually when I elaborate, you can do like, a fun demo or a video, or I usually try to do something hands-on where I got some glacier goo out and they did some timing activities and they got to really explore and see how ice sheets move. And then in the end, I asked them lots of questions about what they observed and how did the ice move and what would make it move faster and why. And so from that, I just planned this quick and easy lesson that I could use with any age group that really got the kids excited, got them doing science, and got them thinking instead of just somebody talking to them. And then my last tip for you today is to make the partnership last. That a partnership is not just one visit, one project, or one partner or one presentation. That it should be long lasting if you want it to be a true partnership. It could be just simple from when you're in the field to sending the kids a postcard or an email or blogging about your experiences, sending pictures, Skyping with the classroom. I would definitely say include your grad students and be mentor to them on how to interact with and share their research with all different age groups. And get involved. It could be a career day. You could be a science fair judge. You could be a mentor to a student on a research project. Or you can even continue your collaboration with the teacher by inviting your teacher to your lab or into the field with you when they have their summers off. So there's lots of definite things that you can do to make that partnership more than just a one and done. So those are my tips and my suggestions. And yeah, if you have any questions, I would love to answer them. And my email is on there. And I would love to be a resource to you if you have any questions about how you can make these partnerships work or just want to bounce ideas off of me. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. We are taking formal questions now, so please type your questions in the chat window so that Lindsay can answer them. I see a lot of people are typing in right now. We also want one more reminder for those of you that have joined. Please type your name and where you're from in the chat box as well.
All right, Sarah. So Sarah's question is that how do you figure out who teaches science at your local high school? And it's a great option. So if you're looking for a teacher to work with, starting local is definitely a good option. What I would recommend is that, one, you could go visit the school and talk to the secretaries. Secretaries are wonderful, and ask who the science teachers are, and usually the secretary will be able to tell you kind of who is your best option. You could email the principal as well. That would be a good option. And usually on a high school website, they have a staff directory that will point you in the direction of who are the science teachers, and usually an email. And you could just send out an email to whoever was based on science and try to find one that way. But that's definitely a great suggestion to start local. All right, so moving down. It goes so quick. All right, so Catherine, starting with your first one. Are there ways that scientists can connect with teachers or teachers connect with scientists based on topics of interest or expertise? So I think definitely that's what the Globe is trying to work towards with this scientist network. But other one is Skype in the classroom. That is one of the ways that they want to work that is by scientists posting that, hey, I would love to talk to classrooms on this topic, and then teachers being able to search through that. That's definitely one way. I know through Polar Trek, if you're trying to incorporate polar stuff, that definitely a lot of scientists and research groups are doing webinars all throughout the year there too.
Yes, I'm also going to chime in. I'm Sarah Tessendorf from the GLOBE Program Office, by the way. I've been speaking all this time and never introduced myself. But Catherine, I also want to reiterate the fact that the GLOBE International Scientist Network is being established to help make these connections, especially within the GLOBE community. And so as scientists join the community and are posted on the member listing, then teachers can see them, as well as scientists can also look about and see what GLOBE schools are in their local region, or maybe in a region where they're going to be doing a field project and so forth. So we're hoping that the network itself can help make some of those connections.
Yep, and then someone, sorry, Catherine definitely posted too that the National Lab Network definitely does I think of that as kind of like the eHarmony for connecting teachers and scientists together. That is definitely a good suggestion as well. And then lastly, your question, any specific suggestions for working with K-6 students as opposed to middle and high school age? I will say that as a high school teacher, some of my favorite experiences are going down and working with the elementary school kids because they get so excited. I just think the one thing to keep in mind is you got to keep on switching up what you're doing. Probably about every 10 minutes, like moving between activities or talking or showing something new to try to keep them engaged is definitely a good idea for the younger kids. But it's awesome. I love working with the little ones. Am I missing? And then, oh, and Sarah even mentioned too that keeping it narrow and focused too of a topic. That like when I went to the elementary schools, we were just talking about ice sheets and how they move, and so that was just definitely a narrow focus that the kids can grasp, and we can do a lot of fun things with that. So that is a definite. Don't just walk in and be like, we're talking about climate change. Broad topics definitely don't work as well. Sarah, you have a question.
Catherine had a question about the International Scientist Teacher Partnership Conference. Yes, we are aware of that. So at this point, I don't know if we're going to be able to attend, but it is on our radar, and it sounds like a great conference that's going to be happening.
You have another one too, Sarah.
So Kevin's question is, how can the GLOBE website facilitate collaboration? GLOBE has a new website where scientists that are part of the network have a profile page, as well as every teacher has their own profile page as well. So it's kind of Facebook-like in that regard. You have information about yourself, and you can make friends and connect with teachers and scientists. There's mapping tools to map out where people are globally. So if you want to map and see all the scientists, you can see where they are, see who they are, and learn about them through their profile page, and then reach out to them by making friends with them online. We also have discussion forums with this new website that we hope will become very active with discussions and questions, where if somebody is looking for a scientist or teacher in GLOBE to do X project with them, that they can post it in those discussion forums, and we can help facilitate that too. The GLOBE website is accessible. It's at www.globe.gov. Some portions of the website might be private unless you have a member account, but most everything on the website is there to provide you with information about the program. So these have been some great questions. Please keep typing your questions if you have more. For those of you that did join a little bit later, I will reiterate that this was sponsored by the Globe International Scientists Network, which is a relatively new network with Globe. Scientists have been involved in Globe from the beginning of the program over 17 years ago, but we're trying to formalize a network now. And if you're interested in learning more about the network, the web link at the bottom of the screen can take you to the website, as well as if you're interested in joining or have specific questions, you can always email us at science@globe.gov.
I have a question from Catherine about other things that I've done along this with working with scientists. Definitely through AGU and through Polar Trek, some of the things I've done. One of the ones that I would say that I'm most proud of is that after the Gulf oil spill, I worked with NOAA scientists to develop classroom materials for accurately depicting in the classroom with lab activities on what was going on with the Gulf oil spill, and then bringing it back into the classroom. And then so I presented with those scientists to teachers. And so that's another great thing that I didn't mention before, is that so many professional conferences now for scientists have education and outreach sections. And that's a really awesome thing that I've been able to do, is present either a poster or a presentation at those conferences with the scientists that I've worked with. And so that has been, yeah, quite nice. Maria, so are there any common mistakes or misconceptions that scientists have that they should avoid when working with teachers? So definitely some of the things that I've seen, probably the worst one is that just walking into the classroom and thinking that these kids are all just going to pay attention, that I can talk for 40 minutes straight and they'll listen because this is new and exciting and I love my research and they should love it too. That it definitely always doesn't work like that. That yes, you definitely, as somebody new coming into the classroom, you have that wow factor, and that'll buy you some extra time. But you definitely just can't go based on that. That you're going to have to do more than just talk at the kids. That you're going to have to do science as well. So that's probably the biggest mistake that I see.
I see the question from John Moore came in, if there's a place on the new Globe website to highlight activities taking place at the partnership level. So Globe has country coordinators and partners all across the world in each of our countries, and so partners are who train Globe teachers and really are in touch with the Globe community in their local region. And on the new Globe website, partners do have their own profile page, which would be one place that they could provide that kind of information and highlight their activities. But we also would encourage partners to email us to let us know about those activities so that we can highlight them through our newsletters and our STAR, Globe STAR communications outlets.
And so we have a question from Mark. Is teacher-scientist partnership up to them mainly, or school administration needs to be involved? To which extent? I'd say I've seen a very wide range in what I've done. If I'm bringing someone into the school, I definitely let my school administration know beforehand, talking about, listen, I'm bringing this person in, and this is who I'm working with, and they'll be working with the students in our school. Some schools, in order to work with students, you have to have a background check and sometimes even get fingerprinted before you're allowed to work within the school district. Even if you're not an employee, there is school districts where you have to do that. So administration does need to be aware of that. For things where it's just me Skyping with a scientist, no, sometimes I don't let my administration know about that. But it's kind of a broad range, but just be aware if you're going to go into the classroom, sometimes it is nice to introduce yourself to the principal too. It's good for the teacher because now my principal knows that, hey, I'm going above and beyond what I should be doing, and I'm bringing outside people in, so it's good for me. But it's also good for you too, and knowing what the requirements are. And that's one of the things that in the planning parts before you go to the school that you and the teacher should talk about.
Again, great questions. Please keep them coming if you have more. And if you've logged in late and you haven't told us your name and institution, please also include that in the chat window. I'm not seeing anybody anxiously typing. Oh, here we go. Sarah's typing a question.
All right, so Sarah's question, do students get more excited about local researches and topics or things that are more distant? I pretty much found that everything new and exciting is enticing to my students. Local topics, definitely in my environmental issues class, where we're bringing in like people that can talk about the issues that are affecting my kids in the water bodies, that's been very successful because those are things that they care about. But then also, I mean, my kids went crazy for when I was in Antarctica because that's like a completely different world. So I definitely see that kids get excited about both, and that including both in the classroom would be definitely very cool. But if one is more enticing to the other, I mean, Antarctica is kind of hard to beat, but it's definitely, I find local and more distant are both enticing to kids.
I see a question came in from Catherine about, does GLOBE provide any training for scientists before they go into a classroom? That is a great question, and the answer is yes, although we're just starting to build those resources. This webinar is the first of webinars sponsored by this GLOBE Scientist Network, and so we are hoping to, as we build the network, build those resources that can guide scientists as they work in the education and classroom setting. So we do hope to have more webinars in the future, and we do hope to build out some resources that will be on our website. And we are going to be calling to those members of the network who have successfully had experiences, well, good or bad actually, to kind of share their best practices. We have a discussion forum started right now. It's brand new though, and we're looking for scientists who have those experiences to share their best practices in that discussion forum so that others in the network can learn from their experiences as well. See, we have a few more questions that have come in. So I think this is an important part of the STEM discussion. Is GLOBE engaged with those policymakers? I'm afraid that question is a little bit above my head. We do have, I mean, GLOBE is sponsored by the National Science Foundation, NASA, and NOAA here in the U.S., and our GLOBE director, Dr. Tony Murphy, engages with them as well as other important people in the political spectrum in order to keep these types of topics in the discussion and in the priorities. And let's see. Joseph's question is there any way to find teachers looking for scientists to join some starting ongoing project? Again, so we're hoping that the members of this GLOBE International Scientist Network can use the website to put up information about them on their profile page. What kind of research do you do? Maybe experiences that you've had working with students, maybe you've mentored or gone into classrooms a lot. And then as teachers are looking for scientists, they can look at the member listing as well and find scientists that are in the network who are doing some kind of research either locally in their area or maybe that's just in a topic that they're looking for, and so that they can connect with them through the website. Sarah's question about, do GLOBE scientists have citizen science projects? I don't know the answer to that. I guess it depends on how you define citizen science projects. GLOBE students and the GLOBE network of students collecting data sometimes is analogous to citizen science projects, with the key difference being that GLOBE teachers are trained in how to collect the data following strict GLOBE protocols. And so in that way, sometimes GLOBE does act like a citizen science project. We do try to partner where possible with citizen science projects that are related to GLOBE, if it works, though, as well. Yeah, Dixon made a comment in reference to the question about GLOBE being engaged with policymakers there. I see more comments or questions are being typed in, so please go ahead. We thank you all for your time and attendance. We'll just continue answering questions, as long as you have them. So I see John Moore asked another question, who I believe Dixon is kind of responding to, since it was directed at Dixon there, about keeping this discussion alive. Yeah. It's really important right now, especially to keep these type of topics in the political sphere. The next generation science standards is one area where, as the new science standards are being developed, GLOBE and other organizations like us are trying to keep an active voice in helping shape those standards and make sure that these are high priority. These type of relationships between scientists and teachers are high priority in that discussion. So this has been a great discussion. I see there's another couple comments being entered. We will probably want to try to wrap this up here pretty soon. So if you have any last few questions now for Lindsay, please go ahead and type them in. We will have a discussion forum for those of you that are members of the GLOBE community, so that'll be one reason to get you interested in joining the network, that you can then post in that discussion forum to keep some of these Q&A sessions with people that have experience building these partnerships, or with teachers like Lindsay who are working with scientists to continue this discussion in the future. This webinar also will be archived on the GLOBE website, so if you have any colleagues that were unable to attend it today live, they can find it on the GLOBE website. And always feel free to email us at science@globe.gov if you have any questions about the network, about GLOBE, finding things on the website, and so forth. And as Lindsay mentioned, she's put her email address up here as well if you'd like to contact her with any specific questions that don't get fitted into this Q&A session today. Okay, we are going to go ahead and conclude today's webinar. Again, thank you for your attendance. Please share this with your colleagues if you think they'd find it useful, and let them know that this will be archived. And please send us an email at science@globe.gov if you would be interested in joining the network and learning more about GLOBE. Thank you, Lindsay, for a great presentation, and hope to hear from you all soon.